friends, welcome back to my channel. It is me and Lana. For this video, I'm going to be doing the best and worst books that I read in 2024. Alright, so I'm going to start out with my worst books of 2024 because there were less of them than my best books, which is great. And we'll go from there. So most of these are like either DNFs or they just got lower than 3 stars because they were terrible. So the first book I have on this list is The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon. I DNF'd this. I was really excited because I thought this sounded really interesting within the synopsis, but then I started reading it and I was like, this is a little slow, I don't know if I like this. And I guess I don't know if it was a mistake, but I started reading some reviews, like, just to see what people were saying, because I was like, am I the only one feeling very slow and disconnected from this? And then I saw it and someone was like, oh, this was Star Wars fan fiction before it got changed and published. It makes sense. And so that just turned me off completely because while I am a Star Wars fan, I'm so tired of Star Wars fan fiction in books. So I DNF'd it because I was very disconnected. I think I got like 50% through. This isn't what I want it to be and I don't like it. Next, I have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia for Faeries by Heather Fawcett. This was a terrible book. Terrible. I was like excited. It's gonna be like a slow little cozy read about fairies. This shit was boring. And the crazy part was, when we finally get to the part where she like encounters fairies, I was like interested, but it was like too late. This came too late into the book for me to actually care and for me to want to continue this series. I didn't like the way the character was portrayed. I didn't like the love interest. I thought he was weird and I thought he was very like fickle, which I guess is the point because you find out later that, spoilers, but he's fae. This wasn't the book for me. I'm gonna let it go and allow the people who do love it to love it. Next, I have On Rotation by Shirlene Obuobi. Also DNF'd this. This sucks. I'm so sorry. It follows a girl who's in med school and she's trying to pass her tests. I forgot what the next level after med school is, but the rotations where you rotate through your specialties. She's trying to take the test to get to that. And at the beginning of the book, she doesn't get the score she needed to get to the specialty she really, or like she thought she wanted. And then her boyfriend dumps her. And so she manages to meet this guy out of happenstance. And they have like a really wonderful like 2 hours. At the end, she's like, oh, can I get your number? Because like obviously you're interested in me because you spent 2 hours with me even though you don't know me. And he goes, oh, sorry, I have a girlfriend. Okay. So like she thinks he's a creep, leaves. Happens to run into him and his girlfriend at a concert. The next time they meet is at the hospital that she's starting her rotation at. And he ends up like working there, volunteering there or something. And he's broken up with his girlfriend, but he's like, I'm not interested in you. So then they develop this like relationship where it's kind of like a situationship where he's not willing to give her any type of commitment, but she's still there. And it blows my mind. It was pissing me off so much because I was like, you're literally giving him all the intimacy without the commitment. It was driving me nuts because every time like they would do something, he'd be like, oh, I'm not interested in you though. I'm not saying guys and girls can't be friends. They can't. Like there's a vibe that guys can give off where you know whether it's actually friendly and whether it's not. The vibe that this guy was giving off was it's not friendly. It's something more. And he just wasn't willing to admit to it. And I was just getting so frustrated and it felt really toxic. And so I just DNF'd. The last book I have on this list is Wuthering by Emily Bronte. I gave this 2.5 stars. Honestly, I was probably very generous with that rating because, again, this book sucked. All of the characters were unlikable, and I don't know if this was purposeful. So if it was, please let me know, because I cannot imagine people reading through this book and actually liking it with how deplorable the characters were. Every character was deplorable, except for maybe one. It was just slow, it was boring. I've also heard people say this is like a beautiful romance before, and I'm sitting there like, how How is this a romance? It's really a story of revenge. Long game revenge. And I think I realized that me and the Bronte sisters are just not gonna click, because I also didn't really like Jane Eyre. I like totally get writing flawed characters. This was beyond flawed. Like, this was beyond that, I feel like. Those are my worst books. Thankfully, there were not a lot. So now we're getting into my best books. So I actually was using this system where every month I would look at the books and how I rated them and decide which ones were my favorite. So that way, when I got to the end of the year, I'd have like one book a month that I loved, and that would be my best of 2024. It actually worked. I have a good stack. I think there was one month where I just didn't choose one because I think I only read 2 books and they were both like meh. So the first book I have on this list is The Enchanted Hacienda by J.C. Cervantes. So this is following a girl whose family owns a magical flower farm. And so when you start the story, she's in New York. She's in a terrible relationship. She has a terrible job she doesn't like. And she kind of just has a moment where she's just done with it. So she quits her job, breaks up with her boyfriend, and moves back home to help her family with this flower farm. The catch is, with this flower farm, everybody in her family has a magical ability tied to this farm except for her. And she doesn't really know if that's purposeful or if it's just ability she's never like found or what. While she's there, she meets this guy and she manages to fall in love with him, and they have this like whirlwind romance, and she's trying to figure out if this is natural or if the flower farm had something to do with this. And I just really loved this. It gave me Encanto vibes. The fact that like there is this farm that provides magical abilities to the family members, and the family is very, very close, but it also still held its own with its own individual aspects. And I just really loved reading this. I loved how close the family was, especially because it's a family of women. I really hope that the author decides to write more in this world with this family. I would love to read books based off of the cousins and the mother and the aunt as well, just because of how interesting she built this world to be. I really loved the romance in this. I thought it was super sweet. Even though there were parts of it where you were trying to figure out, okay, is this magical or is this natural? Even in those parts, I felt like it was still like genuine. Next, I read The Wishing Game by Meg Schaffer. This was also a 5-star read. This probably was my favorite book of 24, I could say. This is about a woman who is a teacher's aide, so she doesn't really make a lot of money, but there is a boy in her class who is in the foster care system, and she wants to adopt him. Like, she wants to be his mom. But unfortunately, because of the fact that she doesn't make a lot of money, her home situation, like, she has roommates, so it's not very spacious, and it's just not very stable in the eyes of a social worker. Because of all that, she is unable to do that. And so she kind of has a deadline before they either move him to a new foster home or somebody adopts him. She's trying to figure out what to do, and she ends up being entered into this competition created by this children's author that she used to love as a child. He specifically chose her and like 5 other people that used to write him letters. And while she's there in the competition, they have to solve clues, and if they win, they get the next manuscript of his book, which is worth millions. So they could do whatever they want with it. They could sell it, they could publish it, and then make the money off that. So she sees this as her opportunity, and she joins and she goes. And in doing so, she kind of gains some healing and closure in regards to her childhood and the things that happened to her by her family. And then she also finds like love, there's romance and everything like that. I really loved this. I feel like this book kind of healed a little bit of my inner child as well, because it was such a gentle story and a gentle way to address childhood trauma. I don't know what else to say without spoiling it. Next, I also have Some Shall Break by Ellie Marney. This is the sequel to None Shall Sleep, which is a Criminal Minds-esque story based in the 80s. It follows these 2 teenagers who help the FBI solve cases. Specifically because the boy that you meet in the first book, his father was killed by a serial killer, and then the girl, she was actually kidnapped by a serial killer and managed to be his only survivor. It picks up like a year or 2 after the first book, and Emma is away at college, and because of circumstances, she's actually brought back in to the FBI to help with another case. So I really enjoyed this first one, and I was really hoping the author would write a second one, and she did, and I was so excited for this. And this did not disappoint. I really loved it. I'm honestly not going to say too much about it because it is the sequel, but I really loved seeing the dynamics of their teamwork again, her and her partner. And I loved the chaos that Simon, the serial killer that you meet in the first book, brings back into this. There's going to be a next book, and so I'm really excited for that. Alright, so the next book that I really loved is The Blood Trials by N.E. Davenport. This is a banger. Yo, like, I wasn't sure what to expect when starting this, but then I did, and I loved it so much. It's brutal, it's fun, it's emotional. I feel like it was everything I wanted in a fantasy that I didn't know I wanted. So this isn't a YA fantasy, by the way. This is an adult or new adult, I guess, fantasy. But this follows a girl whose grandfather has died when you start the story, and so she has been in this like military academy training to be part of the elite squads for her whole life, basically. And when her grandfather dies, she just like loses it. She loses all will to really try. She loses all will to really like put forth any effort, and so she barely graduates. But then she finds out that her grandfather was potentially murdered, and so that puts this drive back into her to figure out who did it, and puts the drive back into her to become an elite again. And so as she's doing this, she's going through the next phase of the academy within the elite sections, and she's having to decide, like, okay, who is the killer, who betrayed him, but also they're having to deal with an outside dictator almost trying to come in and take over their land and basically colonize it. And so she's also having to deal with training for that and figuring out how to stop this person from becoming the next big baddie. So I really loved this. I thought it was fun. I thought it was badass. I thought it was sad at times, but like emotional too. And I'm really sad that this is a duology. I really wish, I don't know if it was the publisher or the author, I really wish she would have been able to finish this, because the second book ends on such an open-ended note with a lot of things unfinished that I need to know what happens next. And I'm just really upset that we don't. Alright, next we have, this should be no surprise to you all, but my girl Emily Henry. We have her 2024 release, Funny Story, on this list. I thought this was fun. I thought it was cute. I thought it was very emotional. I really loved it, just like I love all of her other books. This follows these two people here whose exes basically left them to marry each other. And so the sad thing about the girl is that her and her ex were engaged, and she literally moved to his hometown, and they bought like a house together and everything. And then like the couple of days or the night before the wedding, he comes and he tells her that he's in love with his best friend and that he doesn't want to marry her. And the best friend happens to be this guy's ex as well, so they're both very much blindsided. And so because they don't know what else to do, they move in with each other to kind of like basically cope and like figure out how to heal from this mess. So in doing so, they actually become close, and they become friends, and then they become more. It's kind of about that, but I feel like it's also about her like figuring out who she was outside of this relationship and who she is now, and create roots for herself in this town she didn't even really want to be in the first place. And I just really loved it. I liked seeing their genuine relationship build from like friendships to more. And then I liked seeing the comeuppets come around to the exes, because they definitely deserved what they got. Definitely deserved what they got. Alright, so the next book that was Wild Love by Elsie Silver. So she wrote the Chestnut Spring series. So the only one I've read in that series is the Heartless one with the guy and the kid and the nanny. I really loved that one. I really loved the nanny. She's super cute. This book is the first book in a new spin-off series she's doing. And so the connection between this and Heartless is that the nanny in that book, this is about her brother. He lives in another town and he's a music executive. A little girl comes out of nowhere and she's like, actually, you're my sperm donor dad. And my mom is like dealing with a lot of grief, so I thought I could live with you. So he is like a really sweet guy, and he actually decides to take her in and help the mom out and everything like that. So not only is he now raising a surprise daughter he didn't really know about, he is also dealing with the fact that his childhood crush is back in town, and he's like starting to blossom feelings again. And so the childhood crush, she has her boss like makes a move on her even though she doesn't want it, and so she ends up quitting and moving home. And so in doing so, she also reacquaints herself with her childhood crush, which is the brother, and they like go from there. So he ends up like hiring her as like an assistant or like an executive assistant or something within his music business thingy, and they like grow close again and then fall in love, basically. So I liked it. It's a cute story. He's just as eclectic as his sister, and she actually does make a surprise appearance in this, which I absolutely loved. And I think I might check out the rest of the books in this series as well. Alright, so the next book I have on this list is Spark of the Everflame by Penn. This should be no surprise if you watched my wrap-up, because I absolutely love this story. I thought it was so good. It had me intrigued. The world was interesting. This follows a girl named DM whose mother has gone missing. Her mother was the healer for the humans and the descended, especially the royalty. So because her mother is gone, she has to take her place and become their healer in order to help her brother stay in school. She gets pulled into this world of the descended, and she starts to realize that maybe there are some similarities that she's seeing between her and them that she didn't realize made her different from the people that she's been around all her life. There's also a rebellion aspect in there that she's unfortunately pulled into, and so she has to decide like what she's going to do with that. And so she's kind of coming into herself and kind of figuring out what she does and does not want, and how she does and does not want to portray herself. Alright, next we have Blood and Steel by Helen Scheuerer. Again, love this book. I talked a little bit about it in my 2024 wrap-up. This follows a girl who lives in a world where women are not allowed to become warriors, and so she happens to save the king because of like random circumstances, and he grants her wish to become a female warrior, one of the first and few. She ends up meeting one of the legendary warriors who ends up becoming one of her trainers, and she is forced to really work hard and prove herself to all the men that are surrounding her and thinking that she's like out of her mind. And so she also has to deal with the fact that she's supposed to die within the next few years, and there is a big evil coming for them, and they don't know what it is and why. I really liked this. I liked the romance. I liked the world. I liked that our main character was super badass, and she never really let the men best her, and she never faltered. And this series is already finished, so I'm really looking forward to picking up the next few books and seeing what happens next. Right, and then the last book I have on my list is The Spellshop by Beth Durst. I loved this. It was so cute, so cozy. It follows this girl who is a librarian in the capital city, and they're under a revolutionary war at the moment. And so the rebels are like destroying everything in the city to basically kick out the corrupt king. And so she and her talking plant manage to escape the burning library, and they save some books, and they sail off to her home island where she used to live as a child. And she hasn't been there in years, but when she gets there, her parents' house is like gross, but it's untouched. So she decides to make that their home base until they can figure out what to do next, or if the capital is even bearable to go back to. And so while she's on this island, she meets all the inhabitants, and she realizes they're very nosy people and they're all up in each other's business. But she also realizes that she needs to make a living for herself, and they are lacking in the sense of magical help, because before the kingdom was corrupt, they used to send out magicians to help the islands magically with their growing needs and with the weather in order to help them thrive. And so because the kingdom was corrupt, they stopped doing that, and so she decides to take it upon herself to use the books that she saved to help the island thrive again. even though it's very legal. And from there, she kind of creates her own family. She like kind of finds a place where she belongs. I, again, really love this. I thought the romance was cute, but I even thought the friendships she was building were so sweet. I really loved that she was able to find a place for herself, and she was willing to protect this place no matter what. I am super looking forward to checking out the next book. I think it's a companion book, so it's gonna be like in the same world maybe, but not the same people. So I'm really looking forward to it because I think this author so far with this first book wrote this very well. Those are my best and worst of 2024. Hopefully you all enjoyed this. I really tried to pick books that made me feel genuine things, and I feel like all of these books did that, good and bad. So thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, if you have any questions, concerns, please leave all that in the comments below. Let me know what books you loved and hated in 2024. If you're not good at commenting, I'm gonna go ahead and say leave me an emoji. And if you liked the video, please like it down below. And if you want to see more videos from me, please hit that subscribe button. You're awesome flowers in a world full of weeds.